Hello, people. To me, it seems like it's been a while since I did one of these videos. I have finished a book, Army of the Potomac, Glory Road. This is my last one by Bruce Catton. It's been a while because I wasted like 10 days reading another book, and I picked this one up. I knew I had this, but I was sick of Bruce Catton. But I read this and I really enjoyed it. Bruce Catton follows a procedure. He's got a script for his books. You know, he'll start out with a battle. He started out with Fredericksburg here, and he'll end with a battle, and he ended with Gettysburg. And I've read 8 books now, 8 Civil War books, 8.5 counting that other one. And this is the first, the first real description of Gettysburg that I've got. If you don't know a hell of a lot about the Civil War, you think Gettysburg was the whole fucking thing. It was a big, kind of a big turning point, yeah, but there was much, much more. So let's get into it here. I did something different. My sticky notes that I put in the book as I'm reading, it all depends on what kind of paper this book is made out of. You know, this is like rough paper, and if it's smooth, shiny paper, the sticky notes stick really good. If it's rough paper, they don't, and they're fucking falling out while I'm trying to read it and everything. So I didn't stick them in the book. I just got them right here. So he talks about the bounty system a little bit. In the beginning of the war, the federal troops enlisted because they wanted to. They enlisted because they were concerned about the Union. You know, they enlisted because of patriotism and the flag and all of that. Later on, when they found out that so many people were getting killed, they had to offer what they called a bounty, and it was a bonus for enlisting, is what it was, and it got, it was good money for back then, like up to $500, $1,000. The veteran troops that didn't get the bounty when they signed up, they weren't too crazy about the troops that would come in, and they would be like replacement troops. And so if you got the bounty when you signed up, the veteran troops would shun you when you came into the ranks. And there's just a little story about this Detroit, Michigan regiment that comes and joins the Iron Brigade, and how they have to earn their respect, and they do it. They earn their respect by getting killed a lot. Burnside is the commander for Fredericksburg. Fredericksburg was just an unmitigated disaster. And here, Bruce Catton has a habit of having the words had in a sentence, which is a little bit unusual. I've talked about this before with the Bruce Catton book. Sometimes you'll go an entire book and you'll never see that. Bruce Catton did it 23 times in this book. This was a 337-page book. And on 23 pages, well, actually there was 2 pages where he did it twice. I wrote down all the page numbers. He does it 23 times. Doesn't sound like much, but it's unusual to see had. So I'm reading about Fredericksburg and Burnside. And Burnside was not a good, he may have been like a good divisional commander, but to be in command of the entire Army of the Potomac, he was not, he was out of his element. And so as I'm reading this, leading up to Fredericksburg, his plans for Fredericksburg, he literally, it wasn't in this book, but it was in one of the previous books that I read, he literally decided to attack Lee where Lee was the strongest, where they had been entrenching for a week. He decided to attack there because he thought that's where Lee would expect it the least. That was just one of the stupid things. And then, when it started to go bad, he just kept pouring troops in. It was a disaster. The Confederates maybe lost 2,000 men, and the their casualty list was like 10, 12,000. It was very bad. So when I'm reading this, I'm thinking, since we got this COVID thing going on right now in the United States, and it's a fucking disaster, I'm thinking, you know, this guy, he's reminding me of Trump, because it's just one thing after another is all fucked up. But then later on, I felt bad because on page 94, let's see if I can find it. Now that I don't have these on the page, it's a little bit different for me. Page 94. Oh, Jesus. Yeah. Burnside writes to a guy named Halleck, and he writes, "For the failure of the attack, I am responsible." So, after I read that, I felt bad about comparing him to Trump, because Burnside may have been an idiot, he may have fucked up over and over and over, but at least he had enough integrity to take responsibility for what happened. And if you've ever been in charge of something, you know, I spent 8 years as a plant manager, and this is what you do. When things are going right, you give all the credit to the boys. And when something bad happens, you're the one in charge. You immediately take responsibility. That's what you do. And Burnside did it. Right after Fredericksburg, Burnside is still in command. They end up relieving him, but he decides to attack again, and he wants to flank, and he sends his men out marching. You know, at that time they didn't have weather forecasts. They didn't know what was going to happen, and it rained and rained and rained and rained and rained. And the thing is, and it ends up being called the Mud March. They actually lose. It's so bad. They lose men. They lose horses. Page 110. There it is. The second line. This is a guy, General Franklin, that's saying this. General Franklin penned his own verdict on Burnside. He says, "I can only account for his numerous mistakes upon the hypothesis that he is crazy." They get rid of Burnside and they promote this guy Hooker. And most of these guys are divisional commanders. Maybe they're corps commanders. And then they put him in charge of the entire army. Hooker. Page 121 mentions J.B. Jones, and I have his book. Hooker's in charge for the first battle of the Wilderness. They call it Chancellorsville. I like to call it the first battle of the Wilderness, because Grant comes through later on and fights in the same place. They're literally fighting over the skeletons from the first battle. Lee heads north. They get rid of Hooker, and they promote Meade. And Meade is in there until the end. Grant does take command of the Army of the Potomac, but Meade is still there. He's commanding one of the larger groups. And Lee heads north, and that's what leads to Gettysburg. And just an interesting thing, Lee actually heads north, and they don't even know it, and then they start to go after him. There's a lot of cavalry screening Lee's forces. They don't know exactly where he is, so the Federal Army is trying to figure out where he is and where they're going to meet up with him. And they're marching through Union cities, you know, cities that are not sympathetic to the South. And pretty girls are coming out, giving them glasses of water, giving them fruit, giving them cakes and shit. And something I thought was interesting, at that time, men did not whistle at pretty girls. They went, and you can imagine, you know, an entire army marching by, and doing that. It probably would have been kind of humorous. Gettysburg, after my 8th Civil War book, yes, finally an account. Oh, that's it. Gettysburg was pretty cool. I'd like to get, the best thing to do is to get a book that's entirely about Gettysburg. So that's what I'd like to find. One of these days, when the Trump plague is over, I'll return to the bookstore. I'm sure many people have written wonderful accounts of Gettysburg, and I'll get one of them. For now, I'm gonna look through my half-read books and look through books that maybe I might not have even have read, and I'll try and find something else. Thanks.